In this video, we're going to talk about some other important aspects of operant conditioning. By the end of the video, you should be able to explain the difference between continuous and intermittent schedules of reinforcement, understand why some behaviors are so resistant to extinction, and understand how shaping can be used to teach complex behaviors. So while your book goes into some of the details on the schedules of reinforcement, I'm just going to hold you responsible for knowing the difference between continuous and intermittent or partial reinforcement. So continuous reinforcement is when every occurrence of a response is reinforced. So every time Johnny chooses the apple, he gets a toy. Every time Simone goes on the potty, she gets a gold star. Every time your dog sits, you give it a treat. With continuous reinforcement, learning is very rapid. It's the most rapid type of learning. However, extinction is also rapid. So remember, with classical conditioning, extinction was the weakening and eventual disappearance of the learned response. It's the same thing in operant conditioning. It's just the idea that when the behavior is no longer followed by the consequence, eventually that behavior could weaken and disappear. So if you've reinforced that behavior on a continuous schedule of reinforcement, extinction is going to occur very rapidly. Intermittent or partial reinforcement is when only some of the occurrences of the response are reinforced. So this is going to be more resistant to extinction because the person or the animal doesn't know when the next reinforcement is coming. And there are different schedules for intermittent or partial reinforcement: a fixed ratio, fixed interval, variable ratio, or variable interval. So this diagram just shows you the different types of intermittent reinforcement schedules. Again, I'm not going to hold you responsible for knowing the distinctions between the two. What I want you to understand is that, again, with operant conditioning, extinction can occur, and it's, again, the weakening and eventual disappearance of a learned response, and that it's the variable ratio that's going to be the most resistant to extinction because the person or the animal doesn't really know when to expect that next reinforcement, whereas the fixed interval is going to be the most susceptible to extinction when we're talking about intermittent schedules of reinforcement. Now, gambling is reinforced on this variable ratio level of reinforcement, and that's one of the reasons gamblers just keep on going and going. They know the reward's coming at some time, they just don't know when to expect it. So they just keep thinking that it's going to be the next hand, or the next time they pull that handle, or the next time they roll the dice, whatever it is. Now, can you think of any behaviors that might be explained by intermittent reinforcement? We already talked about gamblers, but what about something, that keeps the gamblers gambling, right? How about lucky charms or superstitions? So you have a batter who wears a certain hat and gets a home run, and maybe every so often that happens. So they're going to keep wearing that hat or putting those gloves in their back pocket, whatever that superstition might be. A gambler lights up a cigarette and gets a blackjack. So then they think, well, if I light up another cigarette, I'll get another blackjack, because eventually it'll happen. It'll get reinforced. About find a penny, pick it up, and all the day you'll have good luck. Sometimes you might have good luck, and sometimes you might not. So why are these resistant to extinction? Yes, it's what we talked about on the previous page. They're reinforced on an intermittent schedule. Now let's talk about shaping. So shaping is a technique used in operant conditioning, or a technique, I should say, that uses operant conditioning methods to teach complex behaviors by reinforcing what are called successive approximations of a desired behavior. These might be tasks like getting an animal to do tricks. When you go to SeaWorld and you see that dolphin jump 16 feet in the air and touch their nose to a ball, that didn't just happen. Sure, dolphins like to jump in the air and have fun when they're in the ocean, but they don't necessarily naturally touch their nose to a ball. Getting a toddler to say water. So my oldest, she was saying complete sentences and was still calling water wah, not even wah-wah. And so, but that's kind of how words develop with toddlers, right? Is maybe they get a syllable, wah, and then after a while it's wah-wah, and you're rewarding them by giving them the water. That's their reward. Then finally one day they actually say water. Now these successive approximations are just kind of what I just described, right? They're behavioral responses that are reinforced that are increasingly similar to the desired response. So we'll see a few other videos that demonstrate this on the module page, but just think an animal, getting an animal to do tricks like the dolphin jumping in the air to touch its nose 16 feet in the air to a ball. And maybe first you're reinforcing that dolphin swimming and touching its nose to the ball. Then maybe the behavior gets reinforced when it's out of the water a few feet. Then maybe if it jumps out 6 feet and touches its nose to the ball, so on and so forth until you get to that desired complex behavior.